You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players, and all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Arsenal Pass, episode 137. This week, we're going to be breaking down the recent Flesh and Blood World Championship in Barcelona. I am currently back home after my long travel. Hayden, I think, is in London right now, halfway on your way back. And all I can say, not halfway. I forgot.
I wish.
You're halfway in the sense that you have two legs and you've done one leg, but the other one is definitely the worst one. Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway from the entire experience is that these economy flights and travel to international areas, I feel like I literally age while I do it. Like, it's a freaking beatdown, man. I'm just really happy to be back. It was a fantastic weekend, but man, this is the first time after a major event like this where I really felt like I needed a break. Hayden, you just want to jump right into your World Championship experience from the perspective of a player. By the way, in terms of news, I guess there's not a lot of news this week, but the World Championship was won by Alex A from Greece. His last name is a little bit hard to say. Yeah, his last name's a little hard to say. He told me a few times after he won, but Alex A from Greece won the World Championship on FI, drafted Max both times in the draft rounds. He was a somewhat lesser known player. I know he'd won a Pro Quest prior to the World Championships, but if you haven't had a chance to interact with him, he's a very, very nice guy, seems very humble. And I think, as a Flesh and Blood community, we've gone 2 for 2 on sort of stand up world champions. So I'm happy that Alex was able to take it home. But Hayden, your high level experience of the World Championship as a player, because I'm not sure even everybody listening to this knows your record or how you did.
Well, I have a lot to touch base on the World Championship, especially some things that we talked about in the pod last week that we recorded just the day before about 36 hours before the World Championships kicked off, including kind of going back over some of the things that I talked about from a personal perspective, as well as some things we talked about from a meta perspective, some players that we had talked about actually who did very well at this event as well, Brendan, and some players that didn't do as well, including yours truly. But first of all, I wanted to bitch and moan a little bit more. How long was your flight back to the US?
I know it's not as long as yours, but it's still.
I think it's about half the time. Mine's about 24 hours. I will trade you any day of the week. But yeah, it does suck.
I clocked about 15-ish on the way back, considering layovers and delays and stuff.
Bad. Yeah. So. That is worse than I thought, actually.
Yeah.
I
wish it was less.
I'm going to be hating myself about midway somewhere over, probably by the time we get to Africa, I would say I'm Sunday myself. Yeah, World Championships. Look, I mean, definitely the worst weekend I've had in Flesh and Blood. I'll just put that straight out there. The toughest weekend I've had in Flesh and Blood from a player standpoint. I think I said in the pod last week, I felt really unprepared. Probably the least prepared I'd ever felt for a professional event, and got duly rewarded for that, I would say, Brendan. I can kind of talk through my event from a World Championship standpoint, but I mean, overall, the World Champs as an experience, I think, definitely an amazing event. Honestly, there were so many people at this event in this venue. There was, I think, around 460 players in the World Championships. There was, we can talk about the calling.
Round about 500, right? So like 500 in the World Champs, like 500-ish in the calling, and then the Sagrada de Familia events were 700 to 900.
700 to 900. Yeah. We can talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Why that was and why. Yeah. But no, awesome weekend. Barcelona. I mean, what a city. The first couple of days, I said to you, Brendan, we were in I think an Uber or something. I was like, man, I don't know about the city. I don't think much of it, but I got the chance to. I mean, I can regale the whole weekend, but I got to explore a bit more of the Saturday, the city on Saturday, and it was awesome, and it's a very cool city.
There's a story that I actually forgot about, which is the impetus, the catalyst that sets the stage for the entire experience we had in Barcelona. And that is, we booked our Airbnb 2 months ago. 2 months ago, we were in a good location. We got a 2 month, prior.
Might even
to
been
booking,
longer.
or
Might have been 3 months almost.
2 to 3 months prior booking, sort of price reduction, which is what happens when you book things in advance. And our Airbnb was canceled upon check-in. So I land off my flight after traveling for 15 plus hours, haven't slept, and then boom, it's canceled by the host. Airbnb tells us we can go F ourselves, and that whole debacle starts. So I had to find us a new place, stuck at the airport. Luckily, I was able to meet Sasha, and it was hectic. And eventually, the TLDR is that we do find a new place, but it's almost double. It's probably 40% more. It's in a much worse location, and it's much smaller. Luckily, after 5 or 6 support tickets, Airbnb does refund us the difference between the 2 reservations, which is about as much as we could hope for, and it took a lot of work to get that. But as a result, our testing house and where we were staying, I moved on Wednesday to the Streamer Hotel, or LSS, whatever, working for LSS Hotel. Was basically in like the suburbs of Barcelona, so it was pretty far away from everything else, which honestly, it's not terrible, but it's a bummer. It's a bummer when you're away from the event, the venue, all the testing teams, and like the areas of Barcelona that make it Barcelona, because we were like literally in an apartment block.
To be fair, we did have a view of La Sagrada Familia from our balcony. To be fair.
Yeah, you had to squint to see it, but you could see it out there in the distance. Ultimately, it wasn't devastating, but not ideal. So we had a little bit. I
definitely spent a lot of money on cabs back and forth. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, luckily cabs in Barcelona are like half price or less than the United States.
Oh my god!
Pretty much everything in Spain falls under that. I knew, Hayden. You know how I knew I was back in America?
I thought Barcelona was expensive. I
need to move to Australia then. You know how I knew I was back in America? I was at the airport. I went to go get food. It was like a place where they make you a bowl. So they have like a chicken bowl like on the menu, and you order that. And then as I go to check out, the tip is asked for on the digital checkout before the food is made, anything. I was like, I'm back in America. Welcome back. You just take the 15 to 30% clip on everything for effectively no good reason sometimes on like these to-go places. But yeah, I digress.
So I think we can, we're going to talk about Worlds, right? And we've got a few things to chat about as well, including sort of some updates on the go-forward position. We heard a lot at the banquet on Thursday night about heavy hitters as well. And I guess the other thing as well is like Living Legend impacts look pretty minor off the back of Worlds because Fire won, but that sets up an interesting dynamic for as we head forward into 2024. We'll talk about all the announcements and things that happened in a second. I will talk about the event from my perspective as a player. Brendan, you did ask me at the top of the show, and then I think we'll also go into the actual event. I want to hear from you. You were on the floor all weekend. You were around the players. You were in the booth, obviously. You were kind of following the storylines, etc. Following into that top 8, some names in that top 8, some stories in that top 8 as well. So we'll kind of maybe go through that sequentially. So maybe I can kind of start with what you'd asked me about, which is from my perspective as a player, the event. Brendan can give a quick recap. So I didn't make day 2 at Worlds. On the last pod, I'd said that I had something a little bit spicy to play. A little bit spicy, Brendan. That spice being referred to was Max Nitro, Max the Hype Nitro. I did not end up playing that deck. I ended up defaulting about 9 p.m., about sort of at the end of the banquet. I was at the banquet. I was really second guessing. The testing hadn't gone well that day from my perspective in terms of Max and what I wanted to do with Max. Other people who were playing Max in our group, so notably Nick Butcher, Tarek Patel, who was also thinking about playing Max as well, they were jumping off. And I talked to Tarek. So Nick had already decided, like, I'm going to play Dromai. I'm defaulting. He was talking to Aaron Shantz, who ended up top 8 in the event. Aaron has done a lot of work on Dromai. He's like a Dromai. He's the Dromai go-to guy, I think, honestly, at this point. And I think he showed that this weekend. He's an amazing Dromai player and Dromai deck builder. And he kind of was talking to Nick and had a list that Nick thought was really good. And so Nick went back to Dromai. And then Tarek, I talked to Tarek at the banquet. And I was like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm locking in Dash. I'm off Max. Matt Rogers was also on Max and ended up staying on Max and playing Max. I ended up jumping off as well. Aaron Shantz was very kind to give me his list, which I did not expect him to. He's very, very kind. An absolute gentleman is Aaron Shantz. So I also jumped back onto Dromai. But I did not day 2. Ran into the event, lost round 1 to a Fi, managed to pick up a win in round 2 and then lose 1-1 in CC. So finished 2-2 in CC, heading into draft. I thought I actually drafted a really good Dash deck, to be honest. I thought I positioned myself really well in the draft, Brendan, but ended up like 1-2ing my draft with what I thought was like a 2-1, maybe even 3-0 deck. So Yeah, I just think the preparation honestly kind of wasn't there for me, and I even looking at my draft deck, like I thought it looked pretty good, but I kind of talked to a few other players and like, yeah, like deck looks pretty good, but I think, how are you feeling about your sideboarding? And I think I maybe misevaluated some of the things in this format with my limited amount of drafts, so ended up 3-4 missing day 2.
Yeah, draft is particularly interesting. I think now looking back at the format, we have a few more weeks left, I guess. I would say I'd walk back some of the opinions on the floor of Tekla. I mean, honestly, not too much. I wasn't one of the people screaming from the rooftop that you should be the eighth Tekla or anything like that. I had pretty reasonable opinions. But I do think that playing Dash and playing Max was a little bit better than I expected. The most interesting statistic I saw across the weekend is that people from day 1 into day 2 overwhelmingly drafted the same hero. So the undefeated pod on day 1 and then into day 2 are the top pod. In day 2, 7 of 8 of those players drafted the exact same hero they played the day before. The only person that didn't was Xing Sang, and that's because he opened the most broken Tekla deck I've ever seen because I was recording his draft. But I watched Yuki.
What did he open?
He just opened he had Evo Sentry base past second, third pick. Like it was absolutely insane. And then his deck was crazy. No, just the Sentry bases were being passed 2, 3, gotcha. And then he just had some crazy cards. But I watched Yuki Lee Bender draft Overload Script Pack 1 Pick 1 on day 1 as well, which is a good card. But I think Pack 1 Pick 1 that you're definitely telegraphing an affinity for a specific hero. And she I don't know if you've watched her matches on stream. It was pretty good. So I think Yuki was very, very prepared to play Dash.io and expertly piloted that deck. And if you're interested how you should pilot a deck, how you should win games, how you should do anything regarding Dash.io in terms of draft, you should go watch those games back because she wins them almost deterministically every single time with endgame win conditions, and it's really, really cool to watch. Same thing happens in day 2 as well with the red backup protocol and the whatever the one that gets overpowered. So what a masterclass. It was but it does look like people were committed to forcing Max or Dash or Tekla, and they stuck in those lanes, and it worked out well for them. I don't know if force is the correct word, but you should have seen page 1 and page 2 of the players, and this was 1 through almost 100, overwhelmingly drafted the same hero on day 2 as they did in day 1.
I think that's the format that because of the way that the card, there is a homogeneous nature to some of the cards. I'm not going to say all, but they are mech cards, right? So I think there is this ability to kind of draft a skeleton of the same deck that you have experience with, and to pick up, you have a range of cards that you want to pick up, and you start to realize cards that are maybe a little bit undervalued for the way that you like to draft, or particularly you start to move into those cards a little bit more, I think, through testing. And I was talking to Mike Ronkia, who day 2'd, and he had been in some draft pods back in Canada with Aaron Shantz, and I was saying, I think there is an edge to this draft format for sure. And he was saying, he agreed, and he was saying, Aaron in their sort of testing pods in Canada and Toronto with people like Tarek Patel, etc., Isaac Crew, really good players that Shantz was continuously hitting 3-0s with different decks and different strategies, but ultimately really refined his kind of Dash database strategy that he liked to draft. And I think similar thing, right? I think he went dash both days. So those people who had affinity for Max, they understood that people wanted to draft Tekla, and there's people who really honed in on Tekla and admittedly forced Tekla and did really well, right? Or at least very open to it, and got rewarded for understanding the in-depth sort of ins and outs. Do you want to talk? I mean, do you want to talk about maybe the portions of the event, and then kind of we can go constructed, draft, we can go back to constructed and talk about the lead into the top 8, and then talk a little bit about the meta and the top 8 overall. Yeah,
I definitely want to hit after that how the tournament was outside of the World Championship, or even during,
100%.
In regards to Tournament Center, because I think that's relevant.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
It was a huge, it was a huge shit show on that side. Because there was actually tons of panels and stuff all ready to go. This is the back end that I guess is not super public, but it all got canceled as well. Anyway,
well, they had no mics or anything, right? So,
exactly. They also, I mean, to be honest, I kind of feel like Tournament Center totally fucked me right at the end as well. After I did all of the work this weekend, because it wasn't explicitly in their contract, I get an email from Tournament Center. They're like, hey, use this Google form to get paid. I go in there. It's like, yeah, to get all of your information. By the way, we only pay via PayPal and we only pay via euros in PayPal. So if it's a business, if your PayPal is a business, which mine is, unfortunately, your fees will automatically be deducted. And what fees, Hayden? Well, we'll find out. And it'll be auto converted unless you switch to euro, which I wasn't able to. So I'm a bit salty about that because they even wrote in the thing, they're like, we know how inconvenient and unpleasant this is or whatever, but I'm sorry, it's not our choice and we can't do anything about it. So really nice to get that after doing all the work. And I know for people who don't live in the United States, PayPal is maybe a usable platform. The United States, it's not. The reason why it's not is because when they rolled out the stimmy checks during COVID, they reduced the amount of money you need to pay tax on from $20,000 to $600. And now you get auto taxed or auto 1099 on anything over 600. And it's just ridiculous because if you're not a LLC or like some sort of company or you don't have an accountant, it doesn't account for any expenses. It just rips it off the top. And it's really annoying outside this. So it's frustrating to me that happened, to be honest. And it just put a really bad taste in my mouth. Outside of that, some of the events were run really rough and then all the panels got canceled basically. So yeah.
Let's just talk about it now. Like, being at the event of the weekend, I also played the calling. I would say like the major events ran to time and they were pretty good. The calling was like a little bit slow. I also went 1-3 drop in the calling, so shout out. I opened my pool. I sat there, I looked at it and thought, this is one of the worst bright lights pools I've ever opened. Unfortunately, I played Teklo. I had a couple of Evos, but I had like no good power cards. I showed Brendan my deck. It was absolutely trash. He saw me playing my last game to go 1-3 to just drop the event. So is what it is, whatever. I wasn't too upset. I mean, you can't do anything when you open a pool like that. Honestly, I played 3 Teklo mirrors against 3 much better decks, and those are my 3 losses. And then I played some side events, and yeah, like some of the side events were slow. And I'd heard that the on-demand events in particular, and some of like the non-Sagrada events, so the ones that they weren't putting a lot of judge effort into, that had these big player pools, because the story of the weekend was like this beautiful sigil promo that I'm sure a lot of people have seen, but if you haven't seen it, you can go check it out on the world's sort of coverage. It's this beautiful sigil. The art is La Sagrada Familia. It is amazing. And people want to get their hands on these, right? Because there's exclusive Worlds promo. So they were running 1 to 2 events every day, I think. Or maybe 1 event every day. And the one on Saturday was a constructed event that had 760 players. The one on Sunday was a sealed event that had 964 players, or something, 960 players. The calling had 560 players.
That's because of the way they distributed the promos, and
no promos for calling.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have insider information on the strategy behind that, which I completely disagree with. I think that those promos should absolutely go into the calling, but I'm not going to speak on it because I heard it via a conversation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but the side events, the on-demand events, apparently they were terrible, especially day one.
Yeah, they were not good. Some of them, there was a blitz event on Saturday or Friday, maybe, sorry, that they just like cancelled after round 1 because they couldn't fire the second round or something, or they like were running, so it had taken like 3 hours to get 2 rounds in, so they just cancelled it and just gave people like vouchers and stuff. Dylan was saying who was saying with, he's just like, okay.
My big takeaway, and not to start it off like too grim, is that honestly I would never work for tournaments ever again. But I also think that there is a very low chance they ever get the contract again after some of the things they screwed up this weekend. Anyway, there's one other thing I want to talk about.
The venue was good, by the way. I did like the venue. Oh, the merch. You want to talk merch? There's a lot of things I want to talk about, but you want to talk merch because there was a merch table, exclusive World Championship merchandise that you could buy if you sold a kidney. So go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, so they had the merch. They had the World Championship T-shirt. They had the jacket, which is cool. I'm happy they did that.
It looks great.
One thing I'll say is that I want to talk to LSS as I can right now. Is that you probably shouldn't be juicing the players on the merch that advertises your game that is like special to the event. So for instance, that jacket was €90. It's $112. The t-shirt.
It's not a jacket, dude. That's a exactly. Jumper with a zip through it.
T-shirt was €40. That's nowhere near cost of goods sold. So like I understand making a profit and merch being profitable for the company, but You don't need to do that. That's actually pretty shameful, to be honest, because that was prohibitively expensive, and there's players that aren't going to be able to get that because it was so ridiculous. I know it's sold out. I know that they made money from it, and I know that they're going to be happy about that, but you don't need to do that. Like there's so many other things we're happy to pay for, like in terms of like getting into events, flying out to your events, doing all this stuff, but you don't need to juice the players on the world's exclusive merch. It just puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. I opted obviously not to, when I saw the price, I thought about buying a t-shirt, but I saw €40, which is equivalent of 80 Australian dollars. And I was like, yeah, that's a no for me. I looked at one and I was like, no, I'm not paying $80 for that. But
all I can say is I ring the bell and say shame. Shame.
It's cool that it was available. A great idea. Execution maybe left a little bit to be desired. But look, over the weekend, I mean, the like I say, the sigil, like these sigil events brought so many people and it was so exciting. I wish that they had done that for the calling. Had they done that for the calling, well, they probably would have had a 900 player calling, which would have been one of the biggest callings in history, if not the biggest. So might have just topped Jersey. So yeah, but I mean, otherwise, I think, there was a lot of things happening around the venue. Obviously, on Thursday, we had the players' banquet. There was great food and drink available. I know people, if you went to play, you had to pay to get in. But the venue itself actually was huge. It was quite a cool venue as well. Like, I don't know what the heck it was. Like, I guess it's like a convention center, I guess. But it's got a very interesting vibe. It's kind of very brutalist, which I guess kind of ties in with some of Barcelona's architecture.
That's really funny you say that, because it's nowhere near as brutalist as Baltimore. Baltimore actually had like very interesting architecture in terms of like how the ceiling. I will say that the venue was like totally fine. Like it was good. It wasn't bad in any way. You're not going to walk away from it like you did at San Jose. And it was the temperature was nice. The amenities were fine. Good. They had like,
once I found out there was more toilets, I thought there was like only one lot of toilets at the start. There was multiple. It was fine.
Yeah, some of those toilets, the lights weren't working in them, so you had to like turn on your phone light to take a dump.
What?
Yeah, it was like pretty common.
Why are you? I wouldn't do that at a convention center anyway.
I mean,
I'd rather taxi back to my hotel, dude.
Nah. But
get
yeah,
get in early.
The food thing they had there was great, to be honest, and I'm really happy with it.
It was pricey, but it was good that they had it. It was good that they had it.
I thought it was cheap, to be honest, compared to like how normal convention centers are.
€7 for a sandwich.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I guess the convention center food's expensive, right? So yeah, that makes sense. I heard the coffee was great.
Yeah, honestly, the coffee was great. Coffee in Spain in general is great. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I don't know. It's because of the juxtaposition, right? I come from, like in the US, like, I don't know. I feel like anytime you get someone to make a coffee,
dog in the US, that's true.
No, anytime you get someone to make a coffee for you, it's fucking $10. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, that's just like it's. So I was happy that it was available and good to go. The amenities for me felt good. I feel good about the event. I feel good about the venue. I think it was definitely an upgrade.
I don't know if they did this in Baltimore, but I thought this was. I'm glad they finally did this, and I want them to do this at callings, at any tier 3 or above event. They had a viewing area for top 8 on Sunday. Amazing. Yeah,
so they've had that at PT Baltimore and now US Nationals, so it seems like standard.
Okay, they need to continue to do that, and they should do that at tier 3 events. So for context, so top 8 was being played, obviously, in the feature matches, which was right over the other side of the convention center. The calling was going on over there. There was also on the Sunday the Battle Hardened and Living Legend, which I'm sure we'll talk about that. I'm sure you got a few things to say about that, Brendan. And then over the other side of the hall, probably a good, like, I don't know, 600 meters away or something, the 500 meters or whatever, they had a viewing area in the corner with like seats set up and everything, and they had this like LSS stage at the back where they had planned to do they did do some meet and greets and stuff like that with the professor, James White, kind of all weekend. They also did the final presentations, the trophy presentations, and crowned the world champion on that stage over the back. So that was very cool to have that. They also, in between that, they kind of had, just to set the stage for people who went there the weekend, they also had artists, vendors, all that in between. And then they had like side event area, and then they had like the main game area for all the big events like the Calling, Battle Hardened, La Sagrada Familia, the biggest event, the sealed event, all over the other side of the hall near the feature match area, which is very cool. I haven't caught back any of the coverage yet, so I don't know what the kind of like.
I can tell
But
you
I had
about
heard
it.
a few things.
Yeah.
I heard the audio was not great, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was terrible to be honest. Like day one,
that's unfortunate.
it was really bad day one. There was tons of different mic switches they did to try to fix it, but ultimately ended up in a way where it did not sound good. That's unfortunate. To be honest, because audio is so critical to one of those things, and there can be hundreds of hours, and the other side of the production can be well done, but if you have that audio, it's rough. It's kind of a filter. Outside of that, I thought that the graphics and the B-roll and just like the cadence of the tournament was pretty good. Like there wasn't as much downtime. Didn't really get to watch backup feature matches, which is a bummer. And then outside of that, the only thing I would cherry pick is that some of the graphics were misaligned. So like
I did see that. I did see the overlay was a bit unaligned.
Yeah, so that was a bit frustrating. But outside of that, like in terms of like displaying players, so like when the top of they had player profiles, like the interviews,
Yeah, that's cool.
Stuff like that, I thought they did a pretty good job in the B-roll graphics, so you could see like the standings, what people drafted. That stuff was super solid, like huge upgrade. They should do that every single time. But yeah, in terms of the production, like and on my side, like everything ran smoothly, but the audio was screwed, unfortunately. And there's just not much that can be done about that at this point. So just gotta, take that as a lesson learned and fix it for next time.
I'd love to hear in the comments if you were at the event this weekend, or if you're watching coverage. If you're watching coverage, let us know your thoughts on that. I haven't seen enough back yet, but like Brendan said, do you like the things that Brendan said? What do you want to? What would you like? What would we change? I mean, I always want to see more stuff about players. That's what I always want to see. In between things. If you're at the event, what did you think? Were you in any of these side events that were affected? Would love to hear from you guys as well. Or what did you just think of the weekend overall? Obviously, we've given our thoughts. Let's jump in. So Thursday banquet. You didn't come to the banquet. You weren't feeling very well. So
I was very ill the whole weekend, and it started on Thursday. So I guess I can just talk about it real quick. So basically, like I have an autoimmune issue that I'm on medication for, and I had the first flare that I had in like a year, and it makes it so like a part like near my hip I get very swollen, and it's like my whole body gets super inflamed, so I get like fevers, like crazy bad headaches, like feels like I was drinking hard, like basically. And it's just rough. Like I get super, so I had that, like it started on Thursday and usually lasts 4 to 5 days. I had the whole weekend. So honestly, the weekend for me was definitely a freaking battle to get through. But, yeah, that's why I wasn't at the players banquet, and I might have been a bit lethargic. Some people have come up to me.
Yeah. I tell you what, on that, I mean, I just want to shout out everyone who came and said hello to us. I think overwhelmingly I had some of the most amount of people I've ever had come up and thank me for our content, Brendan. And honestly, it means so much. I think almost every opponent I played every round said something or said thank you for the content that we produce. And it actually, despite having a pretty shit weekend from a game standpoint, it meant a lot, especially when these people beat my ass and then they're like, thank you for your content. I was like, yeah, well, no worries. But no, honestly, it does mean a lot. And it was really nice to meet some people. I met so many people. I saw people I hadn't seen since, PT1, for instance, or Orlando even like 2 years ago. So really cool to see people, made some new friends, met some new people, played some great games, played some not so great games, but hey, it's all right. We bounced back from those, and just want to shout out everyone who did say kind words to either myself or to Brendan in regards to every time we only saw each other very few times this weekend. It always happens this way. Like we don't really get to see each other that much, but every time we were chatting, you'd come over maybe from after a feature or something. We were catching up, whatever. We definitely every time had a few people come up and just say some really kind words. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you ever see us at those events, I do encourage you to come up if you want to, because it's like probably the most positive experiences that we have from these events are in the in-between when that stuff happens, so talking to you all. So I encourage you, if you feel hesitant or you think we look busy, just come up. Just come up, because we're usually never busy. Yeah.
We're just talking shit, probably.
I do want to add some comedy, though, for people listening. One of the funniest things about being a content creator, and this is not, I'm not about to go down some arrogant line, is when you do bad at a major tournament, a lot of people will come up and, they'll be in passing, they'll say, how you doing? And
how's it going?
Dude, when I got to stand there, Hayden, and cause I've been there, And then I watch them.
My first time, brother.
Consistently, you have to tell them that you're freaking 1-3, and then they always stop and they're like, "Oh man, what happened?" And you're like, "Oh fuck!" Like,
Fuck.
that is it's definitely it's an apt punishment for doing bad in a tournament. I'll tell you that. You get constantly reminded. Can't fly under the radar.
No, I know how you feel now.
Yeah. And then when you get to that draft table and somebody's like, "What the hell are you doing down here?" You're like,
yeah,
thanks,
literally. But thankfully, Matt Rogers was on the pod one below me, and I just pointed and said, "Well, he's down here." So, and he's top 8 at 9 calling. So I don't know, man. Honestly, it was funny. So Thursday banquet. The big news was the pro circuit for next year. So announced. Okay, this is I will give a big round of applause to LSS for this, announcing where the pro tour is going to be for next year ahead of time and giving us dates. So we know we've got LA. We already knew about LA, but we now know about Amsterdam happening in, was that July? Amsterdam. July. Very exciting. Awesome to see. So we know already first half of the year, a multitude of callings announced, $1.5 million in prizes for the pro circuit or the tournament circuit. So an increase on the $1 million from this year and last year. So that is huge. Massive announcement. Just want to give a big shout out to LSS for that one. I think they've nailed it with that one. I think they've finally taken on the feedback. They've worked to improve on the things that players, especially players who, quote unquote pro players, whatever you want to say, players in and around the pro sort of circuit have continued to say, which is we need advance notice on these things. So we already know 7 months in advance. That is awesome. We will be playing Pro Tour 2. Amsterdam, also very excited. Going to definitely try and make it out to that one, Brendan. I will 100% be in LA though, because that is direct flight. Heavy hitters as well. We got some Kasai. We're getting Kasai, Brendan. We're getting a 6-hero set. We sort of saw the first hints and signposting of what heavy hitters is going to be all about. Or the second, a lot of that, I guess, which is also very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, heavy hitters. I mean, we'll see, because the meta is going to be heavy in flux by the time heavy hitters comes out. I mean, we could have multiple decks, living legend before then, so it changes the entire context of the set. But it seems like people are pretty pumped for it. Hey, now I want to talk about the class constructed meta of the World Championships, because while it was what we expected, it was not what we expected. So obviously, the top 3 most played decks were pretty predictable in the form of Jermai, Bravo, and Icelander. I didn't speak to a single person that expected Icelander to be the most played deck, so that was a surprise.
You missed out on Thursday, so I was hearing on Thursday that it sounded like Icelander was going to be the most played deck. That shifted. We talked about in the pod. We talked about Icelander, the shift happening again, and I did talk about is Bravo the Phantom deck that no one's really going to play it. People did play Bravo in the end. It did definitely drop off. People were talking about it being number 1 a week ago. It ended up being not number 1, of course, ended up being number 3. But yeah, the story on Thursday was like, hey, everyone's playing Icelander. A lot of the teams have landed on Iceland.
Yeah, and I think most people that came on Bravo were aptly punished for that as well. I remember I was speaking to Hamilton, and I was like, "Oh, you guys brought Bravo. It's like really interesting to me." And I was like, "So you must feel very good about the Jermai matchup." He said, "Yes." I was like, "Did you expect Iceland to be the most played deck?" He said, "Absolutely not." Yeah, because that matchup is atrocious for Bravo.
Hamilton. I mean, shows his pedigree though. Like, I think on one of the weaker choices of the event, honestly, and I'm sure you're feeling vindicated about that, Brennan, based on that conversion rate. But, just the pedigree that is Michael Hamilton managed to, I think he got 31st or something. So he went X3 on day 1, then went 6-1 on day 2 and snuck into the top 32 for that PTI and a good chunk of cash. So shout out to Michael for that one. I thought he was dead and buried. I saw him on day 3 and I was like, oh, did you play the calling? He's like, no, dude, I made day 2 at 4-3 and top 32. And I was like, of course you did. You're Michael Hamilton.
And then, honestly, position 4-5 were particularly interesting as well. So I didn't think the Ninjas would really show up. They did. They could have been a top 3 most played deck if you combine them, I believe. And then it was Fi at 43 and then
Ninjas?
caught.
45 and 21, yeah. 66 in total. They
Yeah,
would have been number 3. Ninja was number 3.
Yeah, so Fi and Katsu really showed up. And then obviously that converts the event because I think we had 2 Fis in top 8 with 1 Katsu. So really interesting to see that. People definitely showed up on Rhinar as well. We almost had a Rhinar top 8, I believe. So yeah, it was the meta is what I expected, but the way it broke down and the position everything landed in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was definitely different than I expected. So I think there was a lot of the meta. It's really interesting because in most tier 4 event metas, it's always been very, very layer 1. I feel like this one is a layer 1 meta in terms of its Icelander, Bravo, Dramai, but the way that it all ended up being in the end, in terms of like Icelander being the most played deck, then the ninjas really showing up, I felt like that was a bit layer 2. It's like kind of a more it's a more complex meta, I think, than we've seen before. So I was particularly interested on that, to be honest.
I'm not sure. I can see that approach, but I think we talked about this last week. I just think that Iceland is powerful, and people landed on like it's the deck that has the like a really low amount of variance, and most top decks in this meta, or most decks in this meta, don't have that. Like, let's look from positions 6 through 1. You got Azalea at number 6 at 42 played, which has a lot of variance, can just lose to itself. Fire has a pretty reasonable amount of variance, though it does do powerful hands. I think that's why a lot of people landed on Fire as well. But then Dash has variance in it. Bravo has variance in it. Jorome has a lot of variance in it. So I just think that people are looking at these top decks, and I think those were the decks to play, those top 6. I think we less Dash IO than we thought, but I did talk last week about Dash OG being a good pick, and I think the top 6 was about kind of what you'd expect. So I just think it comes down to Iceland just being powerful and being good, and a really easy pick for top players to land on, or for any player that wants to play a skill game. I think
OG Dash did surprise me as well, with how much it showed up, and then it was converting pretty well. It put 2 into the top 8.
I wish I stuck with it. I wish I stuck with my original pick of Dash. That's where I was a month ago. That's what I played up until about 2 weeks ago when I pivoted to Max. So regrets. Yeah. Shout out to the. I just want to quickly shout out to the 1 Riptide, the 1 Ticklevoss, and the 1 Vincent, and the 1 Viscerai. I actually spoke to the 1 Viscerai. Shout out to those players, brave souls.
Well, the Teklevossen was actually a 3-0 at one point. He was on stream. Yeah, so it's a Teklevossen fatigue deck that aims to play Singularity. So actually a pretty interesting deck list, something to look out for. Like another thing to look out for is Chris Iali. I think he either got 16th or 17th, I believe, on Max Nitro combo. So that deck is definitely real as well, especially as we see 100%. Things rotate out. So yeah, I would keep an eye on that Teklevossen deck and this new Max Nitro list is running around. And if Bravo ultimately leaves the format, or just becomes less represented, which I don't see that happening when Icelander LL, to be honest, I think it's going to become more popular. I think that Dash IO is a great pick.
Yeah. I talk quickly about Max because, like I said kind of earlier, that was the deck that a lot of us pivoted off of the day before. The first reason coming to Max was just, it is really powerful. Like the Nitro Mechanoid sort of combo aspect of the deck, basically exactly what we were looking to do with the deck. It's what Nick and Matt had come up with, and they had shared. And I think, just really powerful. We saw it obviously top 8 in Melbourne in the hands of Joel Gibbons. It has particularly a good matchup into Icelander and Bravo, although some Bravos actually ended up running Buckle, which is hilarious. I don't know if they knew that or expecting Max, but yeah, the matchup into Icelander and Bravo particularly is pretty good. The problem really, and the reason that a lot of us jumped off of it was the Dromai matchup just did not feel good, especially if you think that the Dromai has done any amount of testing, has played any games against Max. So Max really does well with the surprise factor because understanding how much damage that the Nitro Mechanoid can actually pump out. So if you leak any damage early, the Nitro Mechanoid, once you combo, if they're 36 or less, you just kill them. So they really need to understand, maybe 32 or less, they really need to understand what their deck's trying to do and how to not leak damage, and how it's so easy to set up Nitro Mechanoid. People oh, you need to play Hyperdrivers or you need to play Blessings and all this stuff. No. You just use the hero ability and recharge, and it's just so insane. You can reliably set it up so early as long as you draw it. So turn 3 is pretty easy all the time as long as you see the Nitro Mech. But the ninjas and Dromai and even Dash OG in particular were tough. So and we expected those to rise, which they did. And ultimately the reason that all of us but Matt Rogers jumped off. And honestly, Matt felt pretty good on the deck, and he is a mech player. Matt got some of the most unlucky matchups I've ever heard of. He got paired into Azuri, which is terrible for Max, and then he got paired into Fatigue Dash, which is also not good for Max on day 1. So he had some rough games there, to be honest. But it is a real deck, and if people are looking for something fun, I can definitely recommend Max Nitro. It's definitely worth looking at. It's a very cool deck.
I just want to talk about my testing experience as well as the teams or the group I was playing with performance. I felt this testing period prior to the World Championships was one of my favorite so far. I felt like it was really honed in. We had good conclusions. We ended up on good decks, and people were very prepared. Solid game plan, solid amount of reps. That being said, didn't ultimately convert. And I remember Tom Dowling said something on the day to you, but I overheard it. He said that tournaments, tournaments by design create losers instead of winners. Like they're basically many people must lose in order for very few to win. And sometimes that's just how it goes. So while the people that I tested with, which is Peter Budensek, Majin Bey, Alexander Vor, Sasha Markovic, and a bit of ethnic smoke as well, they didn't really convert on the day. I think ultimately the process was super solid, and I was very happy with it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a tough day for big names and players out there. Like I think I look at the team PCG Pass and the players that were there, and Yuha and Nick were the only ones that day two. I think maybe Tarek day two as well, actually. But I think he fell pretty quickly. But Yuha and Nick, Nick was at 6-1 and had the kind of best chance, but the rest of us really, really struggled. Myself and Matt did not make day two for the second event in a row. We both also did not day two in Melbourne. It's been a rough couple of months. But yeah, and I mean, I looked at other teams as well, notoriously the Wolfpack, but there were some teams that really converted, and actually one group in particular, Brendan, that I want to plug that I shouted out last week.
Pitch, right?
Yeah, do you remember me? I shouted them out last week.
That's a pretty safe bet, I think. It's definitely going to be a safe bet moving forward, but yeah.
Well, that's because they're so good, but people weren't paying them respect. Yeah.
I think some people just didn't know about them, to be honest. Like, to be fair, I think that some people just didn't know about them, because if you're not watching these... those, I guess, I mean, some of them have had performances before, but yeah, I think that's fair.
About last week.
Yeah, I think it's fair. They were definitely very underrated going into
very underrated. I mean, two of them top 16 world last year as well. Alan Lau and Xing Sang, who made the finals this year, also top 16 last year. Both of them put up nationals sort of results in the past couple of years. Alan top 8'd in Taipei as well. Like these players are very, very good. Pudding also in top 8 along with Xing. So Pudding, I love Pudding. Pudding is gas. Pudding.
Bro,
I was playing
his play. Can I just say his player card? They were doing like little player profiles, and one of the questions, "What's your favorite food?" And it was like normal shit, like "What's your favorite color?" And he's like, "What's your favorite food?" He's like, "It's not pudding." Lol. That was his answer.
So good. So good. Do you want to talk anything more about Saturday, or should we move on? So our 7-0s at the end of Saturday were Yuki Lee Bender, Xing Sang, and was there someone else? There was 3 7-0s or just 2 7-0s?
4 7-0s actually.
There's 4?
Oh, yeah.
Who asked for the 7-0s?
I don't know.
That's your job, isn't it?
Well, not to remember how is that my job? What the fuck? That was my job on Sunday. Remember the 7-0.
I was trying to find I'm looking at the blog, but they don't have like the undefeated players from day one on the blog. So I'm like rolling back to see if I can find anything from earlier. But
yeah, I don't remember, to be honest, because there was like Xing Sang and Yuki Lee Bender were players that we were following already. Like we followed Yuki's draft, so it was very easy to know and internalize that she was 7-0 at the end of that. And then Xing Sang was obviously in that pod, and so Xing Sang was not in that pod then, not in the day one pod. Interesting. Must have been in pod 2. But yeah, there was four undefeated players, I believe, from day one.
The 4 winners of the top 4 pods. Yeah, because the top 4 pods are all 4-0 hitting in, which makes sense, obviously, right?
Yeah, and so I don't remember who the 2 others were, but I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point.
Sorry, I was trying to look it, but I can't find out. Sunday, go back into draft. I found it. So it was Alex Lowe, also of Hong Kong. I don't know Alex. And then Philip van Doncelet from Netherlands, who I believe lost 2 win-ins on Saturday to miss top 8, including, I believe, might have Aaron. I think Aaron beat him for one of the win-in rounds. Aaron Shan, second to last round. Yeah, I believe it was. So those are your 4 7-0s heading into day 2. Another draft, and I think at the end of Yuki 3-0, the second draft as well, to stand 10-0. And then I think Xing took down Yuki after that, and then Iceland and Mirror.
I believe Yuki went at 11-0 and then lost. After being locked.
And then lost to Xing, who lost to Yuki, I think, in limited, but then won in constructed potentially.
Yeah. It's hard to keep track for me because I'm very much in the feature match and like trying to, obviously casting those rounds, but also picking those rounds and like trying to get the way casting works or like production works is that they're definitely less interested in featuring, especially on day one, the undefeated players are more interested in featuring like a diverse meta,
Decks.
right? So
Yeah.
that's why like my understanding of the tournament is different than if you were a player sitting at those tables looking at the same players at the end of the top tables. So I get a different view for sure.
Yeah. And then at the end of it all, very sort of interesting into the day. Yuki was locked pretty early for top 8. So was Xing, and then I think Aaron might have been the next one locked in. I think they were the top 3. Easton Douglas on Dash I think was locked pretty early as well. The top 4 were locked pretty early on. So at the end of the day, the top 8 was, as you said, it was 2 Dash, 2 Icelander, 2 Phi, Akatsu, and a Dromai. The top, and in the order, it was Yuki, Easton Douglas on Dash, Yuki on Icelander, Xing Sing on Icelander as well, Aaron on Dromai, Matt W on Dash as well, a more aggressive, and Easton was on the more like fatigue control kind of plan, and then putting Tam on Katsu, and then 2 players was Daniela Fatarali on Phi, and also Alex. Oh, yeah, you're right. His last name is difficult to pronounce. Ariu, is it? From Greece on Phi as well. Which, I can share what I heard, which is that Alex snuck in after a final round kind of match loss for another player, unfortunately. Which Alex's story is kind of insane, honestly, is that he probably wouldn't have even been in top 8 if it wasn't for something that happened completely out of his control at a table far away from him. Kind of insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So I obviously can't contribute to that because that definitely wasn't a part of the narrative that was put on stream. So you can listen to Hayden's rumor, and I have no comment.
It was talked about already at the event hall on Sunday, to be honest.
For sure.
So,
you have no idea how many people came up to me and were like, do you by chance know about the rumor? And then they told me exactly what happened in perfect detail, complete, like with all the facts. And I was like, okay. So the sources were pretty reliable for
look, I'll leave you out of it. And just for clarity, this is nothing that Brendan has said to me. This is stuff that I'd heard from people on Sunday when I arrived on Saturday after the event had finished. Is that effectively there was I believe a DQ and a match loss, which resulted in a player not making top 8 when they had a win in, and Alex potentially would not have been in top 8. I don't know who the player was. Don't really share anyway either, or the circumstances of it. It sounded like it was not an intentional thing, that maybe a misunderstanding of some rules. So these things happen in big events, and it's really important. These are serious events, professional level events, and it's really important that people kind of play to the rules and make sure that they understand what is required and what is available to be done and what is legal in these events in terms of by the rules. And unfortunately, that's not what happened in a particular match. So Alex's story, honestly insane. A few other kind of like stories I wanted to hit on in top 8. We talked about Xing Sang already, but top 16 last year in Worlds, narrowly missing out on a top 8 in Worlds there last year. Converts, kind of insane, honestly. He's so good. It's just nuts. Yuki, who's just put up so many results at this point, another amazing story. She's just been absolutely killing it since winning Canadian Nationals 2 years ago, and just continued to put up, won a calling recently as well. Won a calling at Calling Baltimore, right? Was won by Yuki, I think.
No, the Calling Baltimore is won by Merrick Kemp, right? On Dash.
Did Yuki top 8 that calling? I feel like Yuki won a calling this year. Am I wrong?
I don't know. It's possible. I don't know off the top of my head.
At US Nationals. The Vegas calling. Yuki won the I wasn't there, so I just remember hearing about that. Aaron, who has just been like honestly at the forefront of innovation for Dromai. Easton, I see Easton's name a lot as well. I think top 8 at US Nats, if not this year, then last year. So, I'm not super familiar with Matt W or Daniele, but, also, amazing stories. Just getting to top 8 is kind of insane, but converting and getting that 100 grand cash plus that player card that's worth quite a lot of money. Like that's life-changing money for Alex. So that's just insane. So congrats to Alex.
Yeah. He was it was interesting talking to him after. He was definitely digesting the situation.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. I mean, you just win that match and you're like 120, 130 grand richer. It's just crazy. So, I mean, that's what's cool about these tournaments. So, I'm sure some players don't like the split between first and second because it's quite large, but I mean, winning first is pretty crazy at this tournament. I mean, you walk away with a different life situation than you came into that match with, which is, I think that's what the Pro Tour and World Championship should be like. Like, I understand from a logistics standpoint, a risk aversion standpoint, that the differential between first and second can be a bit rough for the person that loses, but it's really cool to see the person who wins, like they really win, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if the players in the finals
They
discussed a
did
potential
not.
split or anything. Yeah. I mean, once you get to that point, right, it's really clean cut. Like you can offer splits once you're in a final. Like there's the last two players in the event, they can agree to split if they want to. But no, they kept it OG, just played it out for the difference of 75,000 plus that pro player. Effectively probably a difference of around $100,000. Like, that card is, I don't know if those cards have sold. I believe the Pablo's chain sold. I don't know about the other two, the Ultim and the
Briar.
The Briar and the Icelander. Unsure, but those three, sorry. But yeah, super insane. Just quickly touching on the meta in day two. I mean, I was just looking at, I had the breakdown, but I don't have the conversion rates. But Icelander, obviously, like the top three still looked the same. In fact, the top five. Actually, Azalea had a really good conversion today too.
The best,
I think
right?
I think it was the best conversion. Yeah, but ultimately didn't put any players in the top 8. But I know there was some floating in around the top 32. So I just thought it was quite interesting. Reiner had a pretty good conversion rate. Katsu, even Dash.io had a good conversion rate as well. Max Nitro definitely had a good conversion rate. So yeah, very, very cool to see. Anything else you want to touch on in terms of just the main event?
Not the main event. I'm ready to hit the living legend.
Do you want to talk calling quickly? I would like to just give a
go for it. Yeah, I mean, calling was sealed for people that haven't. I don't know if we have mentioned it explicitly yet, but sealed into draft. What?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I was really hoping to get through that sealed. I really wanted to draft more bright lights, but as I said, 1-3 drop. But yeah, day one, as you say, sealed into draft. And the top 8 at it all. I was just looking to find the top 8 from that event. Which I, for some reason, can't find. Do you know who the top 8? I found it here. Okay. So it was run by Florian Christian Lehorn, who was top 8er from Pro Tour number 1. I'm not sure if you remember that, Brendan, on Starvo. I actually sat next to him in round 1, and I don't know, he just had this look in his eyes. I saw him. Saw him playing his first round. I was like, oh man, I forgot he's really good at this game. And he just kind of crushed it. Finished first seed, then went on to win the whole event. So kind of insane. I think maybe he dropped like 1 game, maybe 2 games total in the event. Some of the other players in there, Valentin Mackel, another. So I think Valentin Mackel and Florian Christian, I think they might be from the same country. I'm not actually sure of that. I don't have the countries here, but I had a feeling they were from the same country. But yeah, kind of insane. Viet Pham, top 8er it was last year, also top 8 the calling. So some names you'd recognize in the calling top 8. Ultimately won by, I think Florian drafted Max actually. So, and I think of the Ticklows, I think there was 4 Ticklows in the top 8 draft, and only 1 made it through the quarterfinals. So there you go. Just talks more to what you said about the developing draft meta, right?
Yeah, you got to be careful. The devs are going to listen to this and start fucking creaming themselves at this like walk back on Teklo. I mean.
Hey, we talked about the meta, there being a draft meta. We've talked about it multiple times, so they can go back and listen to the old episodes if they want to.
Yeah, I didn't know that, like, really kind of I'm not still sure, but what it looked like from the outside looking in, like forcing the hero that you feel most comfortable on seems to be, I mean, I can't 100% say they're a force. Like Yuki's draft looked like a force from, a relative force from, obviously Overload script is sort of dynamic, but just the way people were playing the same heroes in day 2 and day 1, like overwhelming, like incredibly, like the amount of people that didn't do that it was outlier level. I didn't really know that about the draft format, that you could really go into Dash.io and Max with that that mentality potentially. And I'm still not sure it's a fact. So
I don't know if you can. I honestly don't know if you can. If you end up in 1 of 3 dash or max, like it feels pretty bad. So, but maybe these players, and I would love to talk to more to these players. Like maybe their thing was I'll hedge early picks into the hero I like, and if something else is open, then I switch lanes. Like maybe
pretty sure
maybe because Tickler's open, right?
Yeah, I think Yuki may have been 1 of 2, I guess. And there was 3 max in that pod. I think it was either 3 max or 3 dash, something like that. Yeah, anyway, crazy. All right.
Do you want to talk about Living Legend and the really diverse top 8? If you want to break down maybe the top 8 of the Living Legend, all the heroes that were represented there.
Yep. So it was all Starvo. All 8 Starvo. So the reason for anybody who doesn't know why, like, it's because Starvo's so broken. I mean, Starvo is broken. Don't get me wrong, but there's definitely other broken heroes in Living Legend. The issue is that Warmonger's Recital like owns all the rune blades, especially Chain. It can be included in that deck, and then also Awakening is legal. Awakening is like probably one of the most toxic cards ever printed because it allows you to play whatever strategy you want on Starvo and then not be punished for your opponent that's on like an aggro deck or is actually like getting ahead in tempo, right? You just flip it immediately with a single card. So I would, if we're talking about like why is Starvo 8 of 8 in top 8, it's really like some of it's Awakening and Warmongers. I think there's also some cards out of the UPF box. Like there's a new Guardian card that can like delete all the Viserai rune chants on Viserai combo, and it's not. I didn't know that. It's not crush, but it's like a different keyword. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, I can just like delete 40 rune chants or something, which is hilarious.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Civic Steps is pretty fun. So honestly, like Vor came decently close to top 8ing on Kano, because people were underprepared with Arcane Barrier. But yeah, I mean the ones that were prepared like have the Shock Charmers, and that's really all you should bring. Shock Charmers AB1, AB2 is not that good. It's Shock Charmers is seriously good against Kano, so it didn't ultimately make it, and then the Prisms didn't make
Prisms
it
did well though.
Yeah, they did well. We're going to see some bans and restricted, maybe not bans, but like restriction of cards in Living Legend pretty soon. Most probably surrounding Awakening, Warmonger's Recital, specifically, because there's a lot of playable decks, but they just get like the other playable decks really just get deleted by those 2 cards, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean it was a cool event though. People were hyped for it though. Yeah, it's not playable. Yeah,
it was 9 rounds.
Like it was 9 rounds. 9 rounds. People were super excited about it. People enjoyed it. So the format's obviously pretty degenerate. If you put A-Star Wilson's top 8, that doesn't mean it's not fun. When I heard people had a lot of fun playing the event, and I think that's a win. I got excited about it, to be honest. I was very interested in it too. So even if the gameplay's funky, it seems fun.
281 players, 112 Starvo, so say about like 40% of the meta, 44 Prism, 25 Fi, 17 Lexi, 15 Briar. So, things are around. A lot of Starvo, and I think I had all the Starvo cards in my bag. If I played, I would have also played Starvo. I think it made sense, but I could not bring myself to playing, 9 rounds, probably half of which being Starvo mirrors. I just could not be bothered. So,
yeah, and the event was won by Lucas Oswald.
Went undefeated, I think.
Yeah, he did go undefeated. Has been rattling off performances for a while, and the prize for winning, I'm not sure if this is the only prize, but one of them was a Prism statue, which is like the only one that exists right now. So I'm sure it's going to fetch a pretty penny as well.
And the Marvel, right?
Could be. I don't know. I just know. Like I said, there could be more prizes. I had no idea what the prizes were, but I know Lucas got the statue, and I know there's like there aren't any others that exist. So it's definitely going to sell for a lot of money.
Well, they do exist. They're just not out in the wild yet.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll sell for. I think it'll sell for a lot right now.
He gets 2,000 US, the Fabled Collection Prism statue, and of course PTI. So congrats to Lucas. I didn't realize. I honestly didn't even see Lucas. I didn't realize he was there. So
I saw him. But yeah. Overall, I think that it was. I know we had some criticisms at the beginning of this pod, which I don't want to set the stage like too negative, but they're important to say so that we can learn from them and create better events in the future. I know for me, like in terms of like my issues with Tournament Center, some of that stuff, like that's less about the macro of the event. That's more just on my side. And I don't know. I think it was really scummy what they did at the end there with regards to the payment and stuff. But ultimately, that's just me, and I learned my lesson. But I would say, looking at the event as a whole, walking away, Barcelona, plus like the whole play experience, the casting experience, it was positive. It was a very good experience, and it felt like a world championship to me. San Jose in the tent felt less like a world championship. The hype was there because it was the first world championship ever, but in terms of like this event being run, people showing up for the side events, the Sagrada de Familia, it was huge. And just the atmosphere, the infrastructure, in terms of like the support for the players, because there were good bathrooms, there was good food. That was really good. I'm happy with the event ultimately, and if we had another world championship that mirrored this event but maybe fixed a few things, I think we'd be in a great spot.
Yeah. I mean, it felt less of a world championship to me, Brendan, because I wasn't there on day 2 fighting for top 8. So I don't know. Personally, rubbish, but no. It was good. It was great. It was a good weekend overall, and got to explore Barcelona a bit as well on the Saturday, Sunday. So took a bit of a break from Fab for the rest of the weekend. Did play the Sigil Sagrada Familia events, but also went and saw 8. Drank around Barcelona, so definitely drank around Barcelona. So yeah, it was cool. Shout out to the 3 floating guys. Those guys are awesome, and got to spend some time with them as well. If you aren't checking out their content, you've got to be doing it as well. I know they filmed I think a vlog of the weekend, but also they do the fight nights, those showdowns. They've got a lot of names in there, plus the games that they play themselves, and their production value is awesome on the gameplay content they put out as well. So make sure to check that out.
Sweet. Well, Hayden, anything else to say before we close it out?
I feel like I've definitely forgotten stuff, or I've forgotten people. I just want to say, to everyone that I interacted with over the weekend, it was overwhelmingly positive, and I had such a great time. And if I've forgotten any particular interactions, then I apologize. But yeah, I just met so many awesome people, got to interact with so many awesome people, and I love coming to these events regardless, right? Regardless of the result, regardless of the game of Flesh and Blood, the events themselves are just awesome, and spending time with people, friends, new friends, acquaintances, etc. is just gas.
Yeah, I'm excited to be playing next year, especially after testing the week before.
You hit the bug, dude. I was half expecting you to just be like, chuck it, like turn around and say, "Sorry guys, I ain't casting. I'm playing. See you later."
I dislike draft so much at tier 4 events. So it's not that I don't like draft. I don't like limited. I don't like dual format. And that's an opinion, and if you can anybody can disagree, that's fine. It's literally just my opinion. I just don't like the dual format. It's actually one of the things that incentivized me to stop playing. And I'm not going to tell you that a full CC format is more skill expressive or the better player. None of that shit. I'm just saying I don't like it. So that's it. So I don't know. That was, I still had that in the back of my mind where I wasn't prepared to do Bright Lights draft anyway, to be honest. I don't think, especially after doing the pods and testing. Yeah, some people weren't that far ahead of me in terms of the actual micro gameplay. They were just better, so I would have needed a lot more work. Anyway, for those of you listening, number one thing you can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're both on Twitter, Brendan APG, Finn_Dale, and yeah, I don't know. We're so happy, so thankful. Just a great experience overall. I mean, Arsenal Pass has come a long way. We're 3 years in, and these events are why we do what we do, to be honest, at this point. So getting to meet all of you, just the less about the tournament, less about the winnings, less about the results, but more just the experience that we can look back and, at 10 years and 20 years, these will be happy moments in our life. And that's why we keep doing this stuff. So we appreciate you all, and thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.